What causes depression?
If you take somebody and you stress them in the scanner and you cause them to have this, what they call social defeat stress, right? Where you make them feel like they, have this inability to control, the external world, this kind of sense or feeling of kind of social defeat in front of others, that sort of thing, then a certain brain region will go offline.
What brain region
It's called the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. So that's the region that's involved in control and perceptions of control.
Control or perceptions of control? So I'd say
perceptions
those are
of control. Yeah, perceptions of control. That brain region goes offline. And the idea is that if you accumulate enough of that, you're sending a signal into the system that basically trains a system like a memory to keep that system offline.
How are you knocking that out in the first place? Is that where we're using transcranial magnetic stimulation?
No, so it's essentially this idea that external stimuli, feelings of loss of control, feelings, social humiliation, whatever it is.
So you humiliate them while they're in the machine?
I don't. But there have been studies that folks have done that, right?
Really?
They do social defeat stressors
How?
Through different tasks or watching videos. You can induce sadness in normal, healthy controls. So I could put you in the scanner and make you experience sadness by playing like some of the, most sadness-inducing, movies that people have ever seen. So there are experimental ways of manipulating emotions, even normal, healthy controls. You can do it in people with illness, and you can accentuate it, right? You can make folks experience more symptoms even than their baseline, say depressive symptoms. And those are ways of moving this network around and then understanding what it is. So we've been doing that for a long time, since the mid-90s. One of my mentor that developed the original transcranial magnetic stimulation approach was doing experiments at the National Institute of Mental Health in the mid-90s, and they were doing these sorts of emotional manipulation, sadness induction sorts of manipulations. And so you can take somebody who's not sad, you can make them sad, and then another brain region comes online. That's called the subgenual anterior cingulate. So the left dorsolateral is kind of like right at the edge of your eyebrow, go all the way up to the natural hairline, and that's about where that is. The subgenual anterior cingulate is more in the kind of midline of the brain. It's under the corpus callosum, so it kind of sits more kind of behind my two fingers here. And that region will come online during sadness, and, in depressed individuals kind of stay online. And so, the dynamic between those two brain regions normally is, and this is a simplification, there are more regions that are involved, but, the core of it is the left dorsolateral clamps down on the subgenual anterior cingulate in the case of mood regulation. There are other parts of the dorsolateral that'll clamp down on and other parts of the cingulate for cognitive control, like pure cognitive control. But essentially, those two brain networks, those two brain regions within, associated brain networks are involved in this dynamic of control. And if your external environment is such that it essentially trains through kind of essentially a memory process, these systems to be pathologically, in the case of dorsolateral, turned down, in the case of subgenual, turned up, then it makes the individual much more likely to have a depressive episode and much more likely to stay in a depressive episode. And so we know from many different, kind of epidemiological studies that folks with early life trauma, so they've had, abuse, physical abuse, sexual, emotional abuse as a kid, they're much more likely to, experience depression and have harder to treat depression, what we call treatment-resistant depression, right? And so it's like those early life experiences wire in a certain risk within this network. The good thing, to kind of get to our, your question earlier in our research, is that we're able to, with stimulation, reverse that dynamic. And we're able to do it not just with depression, but we can actually move around perceived control phenomenon and other parts of the dorsolateral cingulate combination. So we've been able to, there's a paper coming out soon where we were able to move around trait hypnotizability and make people more likely to suggestion.